Lecture 7 of the Fairyland of Science. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ruth Golding. The Fairyland of Science. Lecture 7. The Life of a Primrose. When the dreary days of winter and the early damp days of spring are passing away, and the warm bright sunshine has begun to pour down upon the grassy paths of the wood, who does not love to go out and bring home posies of violets and bluebells and primroses? We wander from one plant to another, picking a flower here and a bud there as they nestle among the green leaves, and we make our rooms sweet and gay with the tender and lovely blossoms. But tell me, did you ever stop to think, as you added flower after flower to your nosegay, how the plants which bear them have been building up their green leaves and their fragile buds during the last few weeks? If you had visited the same spot a month before, a few of last year's leaves, withered and dead, would have been all that you would have found. And now the whole wood is carpeted with delicate green leaves, with nodding bluebells and pale yellow primroses, as if a fairy had touched the ground and covered it with fresh young life. And our fairies have been at work here, the fairy Life, of whom we know so little, though we love her so well, and rejoice in the beautiful forms she can produce. The fairy sunbeams, with their invisible influence, kissing the tiny shoots and warming them into vigour and activity. The gentle raindrops, the balmy air, all these have been working while you or I passed heedlessly by. And now we come and gather the flowers they have made, and too often forget to wonder how these lovely forms have sprung up around us. Our work during the next hour will be to consider this question. You were asked last week to bring with you today a primrose flower, or a whole plant if possible, in order the better to follow out with me the life of a primrose. To enjoy this lecture, the reader ought to have, if possible, a primrose flower, an almond soaked for a few minutes in hot water, and a piece of orange. This is a very different kind of subject from those of our former lectures. There we took world-wide histories. We travelled up to the sun, or round the earth, or into the air. Now I only ask you to fix your attention on one little plant, and inquire into its history. There is a beautiful little poem by Tennyson, which says, "Flower in the crannied wall, I pluck you out of the crannies, hold you here, root and all, in my hand, little flower. But if I could understand what you are, root and all in all, I should know what God and man is." We cannot learn all about this little flower, but we can learn enough to understand that it has a real separate life of its own, well worth knowing. For a plant is born, breathes, sleeps, feeds, and digests, just as truly as an animal does, though in a different way. It works hard both for itself to get its food, and for others in making the air pure and fit for animals to breathe. It often lays by provision for the winter. It sends young plants out, as parents send their children to fight for themselves in the world, and then, after living sometimes to a good old age, it dies and leaves its place to others. We will try to follow out something of this life today, and first we will begin with the seed. I have here a packet of primrose seeds, but they are so small that we cannot examine them. So I have also had given to each one of you an almond kernel, which is the seed of the almond tree, and which has been soaked so that it splits in half easily. From this we can learn about seeds in general, and then apply it to the primrose. If you peel the two skins off your almond seed, the thick brown outside skin and the thin transparent one under it, the two halves of the almond will slip apart quite easily. One of these halves will have a small dent at the pointed end, while in the other half you will see a little lump which fitted into the dent when the two halves were joined. This little lump, AB figure 37, is a young plant, and the two halves of the almond are the seed leaves which hold the plantlet and feed it till it can feed itself. The rounded end of the plantlet, B, sticking out of the almond, is the beginning of the root, while the other end, A, will in time become the stem. If you look carefully, you will see two little points at this end, which are the tips of future leaves. Only think how minute this plantlet must be in a primrose, where the whole seed is scarcely larger than a grain of sand. Yet in this tiny plantlet lies hid the life of the future plant. When a seed falls into the ground, so long as the earth is cold and dry, it lies like a person in a trance, as if it were dead. But as soon as the warm, damp spring comes, and the busy little sun waves pierce down into the earth, they wake up the plantlet and make it bestir itself. They agitate to and fro the particles of matter in this tiny body, and cause them to seek out for other particles to seize and join to themselves. But these new particles cannot come in at the roots, for the seed has none, nor through the leaves, for they have not yet grown up. And so the plantlet begins by helping itself to the store of food laid up in the thick seed leaves in which it is buried. Here it finds starch, oils, sugar, and substances called albuminoids. The sticky matter which you notice in wheat grains when you chew them is one of the albuminoids. This food is all ready for the plantlet to use, and it sucks it in and works itself into a young plant with tiny roots at one end and a growing shoot with leaves at the other. But how does it grow? What makes it become larger? To answer this you must look at the second thing I asked you to bring, a piece of orange. If you take the skin off a piece of orange, you will see inside a number of long-shaped transparent bags full of juice. These we call cells, and the flesh of all plants and animals is made up of cells like these, only of various shapes. In the pith of elder they are round, large, and easily seen. A. Figure 39. In the stalks of plants they are long and lap over each other. B. Figure 39. So as to give the stalk strength to stand upright. Sometimes many cells growing one on the top of the other break into one tube and make vessels, but whether large or small they are all bags growing one against the other. In the orange pulp these cells contain only sweet juice, but in other parts of the orange tree or any other plant they contain a sticky substance with little grains in it. This substance is called protoplasm, or the first form of life, for it is alive and active, and under a microscope you may see in a living plant streams of the little grains moving about in the cells. Now we are prepared to explain how our plant grows. Imagine the tiny primrose plantlet to be made up of cells filled with active living protoplasm, which drinks in starch and other food from the seed leaves. In this way each cell will grow too full for its skin, and then the protoplasm divides into two parts and builds up a wall between them, and so one cell becomes two. Each of these two cells again breaks up into two more, and so the plant grows larger and larger, till by the time it has used up all the food in the seed leaves it has sent roots covered with fine hairs downwards into the earth, and a shoot with beginnings of leaves up into the air. Sometimes the seed leaves themselves come above the ground,